All right.
This meeting is being recorded.
You got the message? All right. I'm gonna oh, here comes Trevor.
Insurance.
Still got a couple people coming in. And I'm gonna mute you if you guys don't mind muting. And if obviously you can unmute anytime you want. You can unmute if you want me to stop or if you have a question or anything. So I'll get right into it. We're gonna get into congratulations that you get like a fifth of a green belt because you got through a defined stage. Let's just putting up with me for 3 weeks. Now we're starting in on the measure phase, which is, I think it's more fun because there's going to be some practice now. Now we're going to get into our math practice a little bit and have some fun with some statistics, and you'll like it. I think you will. It's as long as you're not, if you, again, I'm thinking setting up like a help session for the homework as we move on to, into the measure phase and into the analyze phase. For people that may not be clear or they want help with the homework, we'll do the homework together. Like to my main concern, I want to make sure that you get, your money's worth, in terms of understanding the concept. So there'll be some homework today, not a lot. Let's get into this. So just a quick review. The define was the DMAIC. What is Six Sigma? History. We got into a lot of the project detail, like how to build a project, like project team selection, project charter, all that stuff that, probably maybe we use once or twice, maybe, not very often. But I think we got into voice of the customer, critical to quality, affinity diagrams, and Pareto, and COPQ, basic Six Sigma metrics, which we're going to see over and over, and again, more about the project charter, project management basics. Then we finished off with some lean. And this next phase, the measure phase, is we've kind of defined what problem we want to go after, with quite a bit of fanfare there too, in terms of like, doing voice of the customer and affinity and trying to figure out, all right, what is the thing that we're going to go after? Can we define the problem? And now what we're doing is, how do we improve? Well, we can't improve until we can measure. So this section is about taking that idea of what we're going to improve and figuring out how are we going to get as much information as we can. And again, the theme here from here on out is, metrics don't talk. They just sit there on the page, right? So what we're going to be doing a lot of is making metrics talk to us. So it's about understanding the current process, how it's measured, and its historical baseline performance. And today, again, this section is going to be broken into 3, because I think it'll be just pushing it too hard with 2. Today, we're going to go through process mapping, which you may be familiar with as a measure phase, which is kind of timely for the people at PTA, because we're doing in Oxford. That was part of the measure phase of that IDEX project is getting a map done. And then we're going to a tool called SciPoc, which maybe Trevor or the people that are in marketing and sales might be familiar with. That's where the homework's going to be today, and just practicing that tool a little bit, because I think it's a fun tool. And then XY matrix, basic statistics, which is just a quick overview. And then we'll talk a little bit about data collection. And next week we'll get into the really fun stuff. Descriptive statistics, the distribution of normality, central limit theorem. These are all just fancy words for simple things, And then I think the last week, the third, we'll talk about precision and accuracy, bias, linearity, and stability, gauge R&R, which is really good, especially for the quality people that are with us. And then we'll get into measurement system analysis, stability, and then process capability. And again, I think you'll enjoy it. Hope so. You be the judge though. All right, so process definition. So we've already defined what our problem is, the thing that we want to improve, the thing we want to go after, and a really nice tool. And forgive me for the Ulbrich people, because I took everybody through a mapping tutorial, pretty much everybody in the company, I think, a couple of years ago. here's a process map. It's a graphical representation of process flow, and it visualizes how the process is accomplished step by step. It describes how information flows, and it starts with an input and an output for each process. And again, it's a nice, I always picture, I can draw a map, I can hand it to somebody and they can get a pretty good feel for how the process moves along. And there's a bunch of icons in there, as we're going to get into in a second. And in the measure phase, the project team can map the current state. And then later on, you do the ideal state. This is what it is right now. So we want to kind of identify the complexity of the process, communicate the focus, because a lot of it is, there's a book called Learning to See, which is kind of the lean Bible when it comes to mapping. And it's really about, it's called Learning to See. And it's amazing once you draw something out like this, and you know, and the shapes, like, you know, the diamond shape is a decision. You guys are all familiar probably with how process maps work. But it allows us to see waste, allows us to see redundancy. And we find out that the same person is doing the
Warren's
same
looking
task.
for it for the classes in the conference room.
Hey, Greg. I know that voice. And they're living documents too. The idea too is, you know, many times in my career, at least, you know, we do a map and then it goes on the network, or it goes in the old days, it goes in the filing cabinet. But it's a living document. As the process gets, you know, for us lean thinkers, compressed, then we want to draw a new map. And the purpose of mapping is for everybody to see the process for what it is, because it may differ from what we think it is. So again, like everything else we've talked about, and we're going to continue to talk about when we get into root cause and all these tools, a map is not done by one person. Generally, we want to leverage the diversity of people that are working on the process, you know, because they'll correct us some. Oh, we don't do that. I know it says that on there, but we don't do it that way. So it's another tool where, you know, I think the A3 process is really good because we always have 3 to 5 people, and it's just simply laying the process out from start to finish. And the benefits are, we can identify a lot of characteristics that we might miss. And a lot more of these types of things get pulled out of a value stream map, which I'm going to cover in a few minutes. This is a simple process map where at Ulbrich Steel, for example, this is the mapping process they use for non-production processes. And then when we look at production processes, sometimes the value stream map, and there's some subtle differences that you'll see in a little bit, we use that because we just get more out of that for a production process. But these are decision points, process control needs, data collection points. These are all things that might get reflected on a process map. And you start at the beginning and the end, and you got to bring in the process owners, people that actually do the process, and really they know what's real. Because a lot of times, like our SOPs and our travelers and those things don't get updated as often as we want them to. So we want to know in reality what it is, you know, record the steps, put them in order, and then plot the diagram. And this is what a typical map might look like. And if the process is too complicated to be covered in one single process map, you could do sub-process maps and put them together. Pretty cool tool. And the swim lane map is a little bit different. This is the one we used, Ulbrich Steel used. I don't know how many, they did tons of them. You know, but largely it shows the handoffs from department to department, stakeholder to stakeholder. That's what those swim lanes are. You know, they pass the baton, then it goes over to credit, and credit passes it back over to, you know, salespeople, and you can kind of see the number of handoffs. And you know, guys, as lean companies, the strategy is pretty much always the same, is like, how do we eliminate the handoffs? The handoffs are what kill us, right? Because every time I hand a task off to someone else, it usually costs me either hours, days, sometimes multiple days, because it has to go into somebody else's queue or inbox. You know, so the strategy, the lean strategy, when the map is all said and done, is how do we eliminate the handoffs? What could this person do so they don't have, sometimes they need certification, or you have to have special, really intricate training or something. I get it. But in a lot of cases, you know, a map goes from looking like this, where it's going across all these swim lanes, to only 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 handoffs. And what that's done is it's taken hours or days out of the process. And I know for one, Natasha, for one, has been on multiple exercises like this in terms of how information flows. But I tell you what, I always used to hear when I got trained years ago that there's more waste in the office processes than there are on the floor. And I never believed it until I started mapping our office processes. You're like, whoa, all the 8 wastes are there in spades. All right, so that's any questions about a process map? If not, I'll move on. Just want to give you a quick introduction. I also just, if you want more information, I have like a handbook kind of that I put together for Ulbrich. It has a little bit of an exercise in it in case you want to try it with one of the processes that you do all the time. You want to try, if you think it's like cumbersome or, you feel like the process could be better, I could just send you this. I think I recorded it. It's like 20 minutes maybe, but it has an exercise too in terms of let's try one, on one of our processes. And that's tool number 1 today for our measure phase. And the next one is, and again, that goes into the measure part of our A3 too. That's where the mapping would go. And then this, you guys may be familiar, maybe not familiar with the term SIPOC. And this is just another way, another measuring tool. And largely it's looking at, it stands for suppliers, input, process, output, customers. And I think when we see suppliers and customers, a lot of times we think about just, the people that live outside our building, but in fact, the supplier is anybody that gives me work, and then my customer is anybody I give my work to. It's a high visual level tool that identify and link different components in a process. It applies in this phase to understand the current state of the process and further define the scope of the project. So again, the define phase is a 20,000 foot view. Now we're into the measure phase, and we're gonna get down to about 500 feet off the ground, and we're actually gonna get into the weeds too. So here's the SIPOC again, vendors who provide the raw materials, services, and information. So I think this is what this slide says, but when I think vendors, I think whoever supplies me with what I need, right, to do my work. Input is the raw materials, the information, the equipment, the services, the people, the environment, the travelers, the routers, everything that we need to do the work. And then the process itself, it's a high level sequence of actions that transform inputs into outputs. And the output is the service or products that are delivered to that next person, their next customer. And the customers are the end users of that service or product. And a SIPOC diagram provides more detailed information than process maps. And again, it's another tool, a common theme. Anybody want to guess what the common theme is here with SIPOC? Anybody brave?
Lean it out, minimize it.
What's that?
So lean it out, minimize it, simplify it.
Simplify it. And also it's another tool that we don't do alone, right? So it's another one where if we think SIPOC, we think affinity, we think root cause, we think FMEA, always think, all right, who can I get? What 3 or 4 people can I bring into this? Always, right? That's a first instinct. Excellent. It helps visualize and narrow the project scope because it gets you thinking about the few vital factors that we talked about early in the define phase. It serves as a great communication tool to help different process owners understand the entire process. A lot of times we're just so caught up in just our little piece of a process, the part that we're assigned to, or the piece that we get clocked into every day. And it also includes suppliers and customers, and again, often external the building. That's what it looks like. And this is for Jim and anybody else that just jumped on a little while ago. This is going to be when you see the math practice today at the end of the class. I'll take you over there. This is what you're going to see, and I'm going to ask you to do one, right? So you always start with step one, process steps. And I think the homework is going to be making coffee, or you could pick any process you'd like, right? But I just want you to just play with how does the process start? What are the 3 or 4 or 5 steps? And then after we get those laid out on the chart, then we go to the outputs of each one. And then we go to customers. And then we work backward to inputs. And then we do suppliers. And here's an example. So please don't use this one for the homework. Probably, even though I would have done it probably when I was in school. I'm trying to find an angle all the time. Feed the dog, right? That's the how, that's what we're going to show how to, right? So we start with the process and open the cupboard, grab a bowl, fill the bowl, call the dog. The outputs are the dog eats, the dog fertilizes the garden. The customers are the dog, the family, and the garden. Now we work backward. The inputs are, I go shopping, I buy dog food, I return home, put groceries away in the cupboard, and suppliers of the grocery store. It's interesting. And Sean Hassett, who works at Albrecht Steel, I have a note here on my PowerPoint. When he took this class, he brought up the fact that they also try to make visible the steps you may not think about. Like in this case, I think this is genius. Like I need to add pills to the dog's food, right? So now I have another set of inputs and I have another set of suppliers. So I think that's part of the exercise of having multiple people on this exercise, is you get to leverage that diversity. So that's SIPOC, and that's going to be the homework. So you can start thinking about what might be a fun. I'm trying to inject some fun. Try to inject some fun into it too. Pick a process that you might want to. I just want you to just practice the tool and the cadence of it. It's fun, even though I'm asking you to do it alone, right? Which is it's cardinal rule number 1, but just the mechanics of it. And if you want to do it in groups, even better. Colorado could do it. Albrecht could do it. Oxford could do it. And which leads me to value stream mapping, which is similar to process mapping. The big difference here is we're really going to zero in on time. Value stream mapping to me is it's a lean tool, because time is everything on value stream mapping. All right, you're going to see in a minute what I mean by that, because really lean is nothing more than time management. How do we spend our time? We spend it doing value added work, or do we spend it doing value added work? The value added work is what our customer will pay for. It's a way to visualize the same thing, the path of how information and raw materials flow from the time an order is placed to the time you ship it. All right. And it's used to identify, measure, and decrease the non-value added. It's to make waste visible. If you go out and watch any line, any production line, you can see waste. But after a while, you can't see it anymore. And that's why it's called learning to see. When people say, and I've heard it forever, and I never believed it, but I do now, that 90% of all of our processes are chock full of those 8 wastes. And there's probably a small percentage that we can see just by observation, and that's where the lean tools come in. They help us see that waste that we may not see with the naked eye. And the non-value activity, just again, reiterating what non-value added is, it's things that don't add value, the customers will not pay for, right? And those are the 8 wastes. And I think we talked about last time, I like to use the acronym downtime, defects, overproduction, waiting, non-essential processing, transport, inventory motion, and unused employee brain power would be the 8th one. I think it's good to commit those to memory, because as particularly if you're on the floor and you're working your processes, half the battle is seeing what you're doing as some of what you're doing as waste, right? And then now I can go after it. And not all non-value added activities are unnecessary. Those are things like compliance things, ISO, the things that we have to do that don't really, a customer doesn't pay for them, but we have to do them anyway. Right? We want to make those as lean as possible. We want to make those very lean. The idea behind they call it a value stream map, is because the objective is flow. Where the order comes in, and it never stops moving through the front desk, through production planning, through purchasing, onto the plant floor. And the things that stop it are those 8 ways. Defects stop it. You know, if we see a problem, it's got to come out. It's got to be put aside. It's got to be go into MRB. All these things, all 8 of them, stop the order from flowing in this stream. And this concept of flow is almost like saying I want to go to Neptune. It's not going to happen. It's a goal. Like we're going to try to get closer to flow. For those of you guys that have done the plane exercise, and that 4th iteration, the 4th 6-minute shift, we got closer to flow, but we'd never get to it. But it's always the goal. So the value stream map, I'm going to show you one, just an example of one. And again, for the folks in Oxford, you have a living, breathing example of one right now in the cafeteria. But we want to plot the entire flow from when the order comes in to time it ends. And the things that we're interested in understanding are cycle time, how long each task takes, the prep time or setup time. We want to make sure that's reflected on the map, the actual working time, the available time, the scrap rate, the rework rate, the number of operators, and also the amount of inventory, also work in process. And then once you get it built, that's kind of what it looks like. And the way it works is top right is my customer. And the customer is the one who's going to determine the drumbeat of this value stream, like how quickly things have to go. And that's basically it's an equation of available work time divided by how much demand. And demand can be in, it could be in feet, it could be pounds, it could be pieces, it could be whatever unit. And then you basically, whatever that spits out when you do that equation, available work time, either in minutes usually or in seconds. Every single one of our processes, as you go from right to left, and then from top to bottom on the left, all the way across to the right, they have to meet that takt time. So our processes are either above or below takt. The ones that are above that takt time, and takt time, again, takt comes from German meaning rhythm, drum beat. And then the big thing about the map is if you look at the bottom, there's a line, a squiggly line. It says 1.5 days, 1 second. And you look all the way to the right. When you add up all of the non-value added work, and inventory counts as time when we do value stream mapping. So instead of saying there's 500 pounds of raw material, it's actually 4 days worth or 3 days worth, right? So everything gets converted into time units. And the top one, the total system lead time in this example is 4.5 days, when in fact, the value added time, minus the waste, where the part is actually getting transformed into something the customer will pay for, is only 166 seconds. And that's typical of what we see. I think in, hey, Jim, you're on the call, right? Jim Harris. What was the system lead time for that IDEX map? Do you remember?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
It was measured in days or weeks, though. I know that.
Oh,
Weeks?
yeah. I think it was weeks.
And I think the processing time was 13 minutes. Or somewhere around there.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so now the objective is, and again, this is another tool that we don't do alone. Now you go to everybody that's involved and you say, listen, how do we squeeze those together? How do we get the value added time, the processing time closer? What are the things that we can attack? And, in some cases, like Ulbrich Steel out in Illinois on that Caldwell job, they had 38 threes that went on the board and they were all closed within 2 weeks, because we started with this map. And the same thing here. I think there was probably close to 35 or so on the IDEX map. Very powerful tool though. The biggest challenge is getting everybody comfortable and understanding how the map works and why it's valuable. And if you do that well, then the ideas just keep flying out, of improvement activity. So that's a very powerful tool, guys. And again, anybody wants anything more on value stream mapping, feel free, you know. Call me in the middle of the night, I don't care. And my wife might not like it. And then the next tool is a spaghetti chart, and it's another graphical tool. And you guys may be very familiar with this. I think maybe Sam might have some interest in this tool. People that are, it's a graphical tool to how things flow, right? And you can do a spaghetti chart in the office also, and it has to involve the people in the process. It can reflect the distances between workstations, the physical flow, and they call it a spaghetti chart because a lot of times, physically, it looks like spaghetti when you draw it. It looks like that sometimes, you know. So the object there is, you know, to map it out and then figure out how do we make the work flow better. You know, and a lot of that sometimes is looking at how the layout of the cell is or the area. And again, I caution you not to just think about this as operations or the factory floor, or, you know, and think about, you know, how can we make things flow better. And, you know, it's interesting is also, I've asked many people over the years, you know, to measure their steps over a course of a day. And you know, when you start adding it up, you find out they walk from, you know, from Connecticut to Miami and back every year, once a year, right? And then you look at like, well, how many miles is that? Because I know how many steps, I know how many miles. And I think the average human walks, I want to say it's 3 miles an hour on average. So you use that, and you can figure out how much time is spent just walking. And you're like, my God, that's like 2 or 3 work weeks. How much more can we produce if we didn't have to do all that walking? That's it's a fun tool. And again, I think in terms of you guys in your A3 process, it also belongs in that current condition, which is another way of saying measure phase. But these are all tools that go in that measure phase. Boy, you guys are getting your money's worth today. There's 3 tools, right? In like what, half an hour. Here's another one. There's our 4th tool, the XY matrix. And this helps us subjectively quantify, so put numbers, the relationship of several X's to several Y's. You remember that base formula for, you know, in thinking Six Sigma is Y, my output is a function of a bunch of X's. Y is equals Fx, where Y is a function of a bunch of X's. And those X's are not 100, because that's why we do the affinity diagram, things like that, to narrow down what are those X's. They call them the vital few factors, those X's. So this is a way to quantify the impact of the X's on the output, or the Y. I'm gonna have an example of this for you in a second too. So this is what this looks like, an XY matrix, where you have your input variables, all your X's all listed, and you have your customer requirements that you took from your voice of the customer exercise in the affinity diagram, and you can put them right here on the top, in the top of the scale. And I'll give you an example, make it better. So you have a bunch of input variables, you have a bunch of outputs that you might want to go, and then you go through and you grade them all, add them together and rank them. And you basically, these 10, 6, 8, 7, and 9 is the weight that you give each of these characteristics. And again, it'll make more sense when you look at a regular real one. You know, so the inputs are going to be more desk side assistance, improved self-service portal, better agent training, self-healing or for known problems, publish a newsletter. This is for IT help desk. What are the priorities, the improvement ideas? And across the top is the voice of the customer. They want fast and easy help. They want more knowledgeable agents. They don't want to be passed around from agent to agent. They don't want to have their PC down very long. They want to improve their PC performance. They want to have better communication on changes. So those are all, that's the voice of the customer. And then here's all my improvement ideas. And then you basically weigh them out, you know, in terms of how important you think they are from 1 to 10. And very similar to FMEA, you add them up, rank them. So in this case, the number 1 thing would be self-healing for known problems would be the improvement idea that we'd probably go after first, followed by maybe adding one or two more phone agents. So that's the XY diagram. I should probably charge more. That's 4 tools in 35 minutes. Six Sigma statistics. We're just going to touch on these real quick. This is really fast because we're going to get into descriptive statistics next week where we'll start doing some math. There's basically 2 different types of data. And this is going to, guys, this is a concept that we're going to carry with us the entire class, right? One is the 2 types of data are continuous data and discrete data. Right, the difference is continuous data is known as variable data. It's measurable. I can measure it, right? It answers questions like how long, what volume, how far. It's things that I can measure. Time, pressure, speed, height, weight. That's all continuous data. And most of what we're going to be doing in this course is playing with continuous data. Discrete data, on the other hand, is it also includes attribute data, but it's a finite number of values. It's countable, all right? So the simple answer in an elevator, when someone says, hey, I was just wondering, what's the difference between continuous and discrete data? Continuous data is things I can measure. Discrete data is things that I count. So pass, fail, yes, no. Polling, you know, when you have a few options in terms of doing a poll, a political poll, or you see all these, you know, polls that go on, that's all discrete data, right? So continuous, think measure. Discrete, think count. And this is a theme as we go through all the rest of this course that we're going to go back to, because we're going to be talking about continuous data sometimes. And those are the tools that we're going to really focus on when we get into hypothesis testing, control charts, the whole 9 yards, versus discrete data. And measurement scales, don't worry about this slide. I mean, I think the first couple of times I did the certification, I spent too much time with these because it doesn't really, in the end, it doesn't really play too much into how this whole course unfolds. But the measurement scales are applying numbers to objects according to a set of rules, all right? Like measuring your kid, for example, right? And height. Nominal, description, category, names, labels only. No ordering scheme is possible. An example is a bag of marbles contains the following colors: 11 yellow, 18 red, 3 orange, 5 green. And the central location is the mode. We're going to get into that next week, you know, which is the one that applies is the most of. So in this case, it would be yellow. And then ordinal ranking is going to be rank ordering, categorical data. The difference between values cannot be determined or are meaningless, like product defect by type, for example. And the central location is going to be median and dispersion. We're going to get into that next week as we get into, but I just wanted you to, there's 4 different types of measurement scales. And again, this is probably the last time we're going to talk about it, if I think about it over the next bunch of weeks. Interval is the temperature in degrees, for example. It's the equidistant data arranged in order. Differences can be found. The weight of 3 rocks, 100, 220, and 350. And we're going to get into central location dispersion over the next couple of weeks. So I think the main thing is just be aware of the fact that there's 4 different types of measurement scales. And then there's ratio. $900 is twice as much as $450, that kind of thing. All right. All right, let's get past that quick. We're going to cover that in the coming weeks. And then population and parameter. Population is all possible observation of similar items from which a sample is drawn. A lot of what we're going to be talking about is obviously, if we're going to start collecting data on a process, we're not going to take every single part, right? We're not going to measure everything. So what really becomes important is a sample. Right? Do we get the right sample? There's a whole science involved in Six Sigma about how do we make sure we get the right sample, and does the sample represent everything? So a population is all the possible observations of similar items from which a sample is drawn. It's the whole thing, in other words, right? It's every single part that comes out of the process. In a parameter, it's a description of the true numeric population value. And it's usually estimated by a statistic. For example, population mean and population standard deviation. So in other words, when I pull a sample and I figure out what the average is for that for that sample, it may not necessarily tell me the average of the whole population, right? In order to get the real true population mean, I'd have to test every one. So the parameter is a sample. It's a numerical summary of the whole population. So like if we do good sampling of any process that we want to measure, then we know that it's representative of the whole population. And now we get a sample and statistic is a randomly selected set of units, values, or items drawn from a population. And it's important. And we want to make sure that what we're testing is representative of a population. For example, if we want to know the average weight of whales in the North Atlantic, we're not going to go out and catch every whale, right? But we want to make sure that we get a good random sample of the whales. And there's statistics, there's tools that I'm going to show you over the next few weeks where I will know that I have the right number of whales. That I know that this, instead of getting, I don't know how many whales are in the North Atlantic. Let's say 1 million. I don't know. Let's say 10,000. Maybe 4,000 is the right number. Maybe 300 is the right number. And there are formulas that you're going to see, I'm going to teach you, that tell us when I have the right sample size. And then a statistic it's a numerical value taken from sample data that may be used to make an inference about a population. Okay? So based on the statistic is a numerical value from the sample. Now I could say, all right, I have 200 whales that I've weighed. Now I can make an inference about the population. And statistical notation, we're going to see a lot of these too. I'm not going to give you the slides, but some basic ones are X, an individual value. X sub 1 is a particular individual value. X sub I, and you can refer to these at some point. I think the ones that we use a lot, more often than not, is things like the mean is a mu, that little u down the second one from the bottom left. N is the sample size. So the reason this slide will refer to it is because a lot of the formulas that you can do in Excel in 10 seconds, but the formulas have a lot of this notation in it. So, and it's important. I think it's important that, we kind of go through together how these all fit before we go and do the Excel, press one button and you got your answer. Things like beta is risk of a type 2 error. We don't, when we get to risk, and I think that's in the analyze phase, you understand what a type 1 and a type 2 error is. Right now, we don't have to think about, but this is what this chart is for. Most of these things are all going to be in, in formulas. Standard deviation is a little less. And then standard deviation of the population, the entire population is going to be this, what's that one? Sigma? That little O? Help me, you smart people. All right, anyway, let me move.
Yeah, Sigma.
Yes, it's like
Absolutely.
Thank you. I never claimed to be smart, persistent. Data collection guidelines. Yeah, I want to finish up with this stuff. So again, we're talking about data collection. We have to know exactly what we want to measure. It's interesting. We're starting the improve phase on that IDEX line, and we've spent an entire A3 with a very good team figure out exactly what we want to measure, right? We want to define what characteristics we want to measure. So in other words, we not only measure it, but what are we going to do when we got it? We want to select the right measurement tool and techniques. We want to know who's going to do the collecting, come up with an appropriate sampling method, and then how are we going to analyze and report the results? And there's a couple different types of sampling. One is random, and random sampling requires giving every part an equal chance of being selected for the sample. The sample must be representative of the lot. And then stratified sampling is sampling from a subgroup of data that reflects a population parameter, like what's the average height of children in 3rd grade. I'm not going to go and measure the height, of every third grader in the world, right? So I have to do some stratified sampling there. And with that, that's the didactic part of our lecture for today. And we're gonna get next week, we're gonna start off with descriptive statistics, which I can't wait. I'm gonna share my screen again. I'll show you the math practice real quick. So I'm gonna send you this document back again. You know, this, remember from a couple weeks ago, the homework was the Pareto chart. The homework this week is pick a process, anything you want, and just mess with it. And I think I'll probably pull a couple examples to use in class next time. And yeah, that's the homework. Any questions, thoughts?
Looks good, Bill. Thank you.
Pretty easy class, right? All right, so I'll get that off to you with the recording, and I'll get you the slides. We're off to a good start. Have a great weekend, people. And I think, Jim, you're gonna stay with me, right?
Yep.
For a few minutes.
You got it.
All right. See you guys. Happy anniversary again,
Thank you.
Natasha. My favorite.
Congratulations.
Great weekend.
Thanks, Bill. See ya. Bye.
See you guys.
See you guys.
You can stay if you want, Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm mute. I gotta unmute you. Can you unmute?
Yeah, it sure looks like it from here.
I hear you.
Can you down mute there?
Yeah, you know what you gotta do, I think, Mayor, is go down to the bottom. Oh, she's
Oh.
flagged. Okay. Let me, can I pull up? I just gotta grab the changes you made.
Yeah, sure.
Grab them real quick. Hopefully it's quick.
Yep.
Oh, I know where I put it. I put it in my downloads. There it is. All right, let me grab it again. Ta-da. So the one, this is the one I think you want to switch to.
Yeah, that was my recommendation, because then you get both the what happened that hour, and then how does that affect. The disadvantage of doing the cumulative, obviously, is, you know, if you have a big problem in the morning, but then all of a sudden you're doing well, you're gonna live with that bad, you know, number all day. Whereas this way you could say, oh yeah, we're behind for the day, but you know, at least this afternoon we've improved or whatever. You know what I mean?
And I think I love like that would be this thinking here, right? In
Yeah.
terms of, yep. Like in other words, we like 9:30 we see that's break time or
Yeah. So what I'm going to try to do for this run and just see how it goes is if we have somebody maintaining that sheet manually, maybe in parallel I can just keep this thing
Okay.
updated and posted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know, I think Tom Hatch had asked about, you know, who's going to be doing all this.
Yes.
And Greg and I talked about that Tuesday. It seems to me that there's going to be a lot of attention here. Like I feel like if the clipboard is out there with 3 sheets, right? Like we can in real time kind of make sure that, you know, we get the hour by hour by, because I don't know if I would assign it to one person and then like I want to make sure it gets done. You know what I mean? So it kind of forces everyone to kind of pay attention for a couple, you know, for those shifts.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, with Tom being here, you know, all day.
Yeah, we're all gonna be out there. We're gonna be living out there, you know?
Right. Yeah. So at least for this run, ought to be easy to keep up with.
Yeah, and then even like on page 2, when we get into the cycle times, I think, you know, over the course of the whole, like in one day, getting 25 of these, you know, at midday, we know we only got 5 of them or 4 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like we can kind of get other people doing it. Like, I'm just not sure that I don't know how safe you feel or I feel about, just assign it to one person. This time,
Oh, right.
because they're not used
Um,
to doing it. I don't think they're used to paying this close attention, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Hmm. I was gonna suggest, I was kind of thinking it would be the helper.
Yeah,
And so I was kind of thinking that we would assign it to the helper, and if for some reason that the helper's too busy or whatever, we could just, do it.
yeah, I think like Greg was saying, he was thinking the helper's role would be just to record the scrap. Like in other words, when they got incidents of, I can't
Oh.
use this piece.
Yep.
And then he was thinking, Maria or, or Saul and then I'm thinking maybe this run is where we're going to start to understand if the helper has time to do it, for one.
Yeah. Oh, we definitely can't count on Saul.
Yeah.
He's up to here with setting up machines. So,
Oh, is he
Yeah.
really now? Oh, good. Oh, that's awesome.
but we
Yeah.
only have we
Yeah.
have one setup technician. So,
Yep. Yep.
So anyway, well, yeah, I don't think it'll be so big a deal this time around. Sounds like we're going to be hovering over that line.
I think we are, and I think it's going to give us a better idea of what's logical in terms of who can kind of keep track of the line. Because I think, as we get better at it, it doesn't have to be every half hour. If I know, a bunch of times in a row that there's
Yeah.
10 sitting there, then, and I see it, you actually plan for the breaks too, in lunch too, or no?
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
lunch though. Oh, lunch is no production.
Right. And actually, I just need, if you want to go that way, I can flatten that out during the break. I just have to finagle the numbers a little bit because it's I've only plotted hours. I have to go in and plot by half hour and then only show the hourly
Yeah.
number. So,
I think that's a great decision. I think they, the team can make that decision on Monday, as as we prep for this about,
Yep.
how, because I didn't even think about, blocking out the breaks,
right. Because you expect 0 during that time, right? So,
Yep. And half during the morning break. Yep.
Right.
So I'm going to send this to everybody.
Right.
And then I'll think there's one that's cleaned up. Yeah, there's one with no date in it. I'll take, take the data out of one of them. This would be our working, like if I printed this out, this would be our working checklist, right?
Yeah. I think I need to fix the bottom. Let me fix the bottom. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I'll empty everything out and make sure I got those numbers right on the bottom. All right.
Yeah, and the thinking is that we're going to have 3 sheets printed out for each day. So for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So we'll have, 9 sheets printed out.
Well, 2 sheets, right? I don't think we're running third.
No, it's actually like the whole day though. So in other words, there'd be a set of 3 for February 14th. There'd be a set of 3 for the 15th and a set of 3 for the 16th.
Okay.
That makes sense or no? I mean, and what I'm thinking there is, this, we're going to collect this forms are going to get filled out. And then I think Monday you're going in the afternoon, I think, right? I was told you'd be up and running by the afternoon.
Oh, I thought we were. I don't know exactly when we're starting.
Yeah, we got to find that out, right? That's the next
Yeah.
piece of logistics about when we're going to start, when the line's actually going to run. And but the idea would be that each day would have its own set of 3 sheets. So these 2 plus that one for the day.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, all right. Oh, yep. I'm with you now.
And I think the thing I'm interested in too is the random notes. I'll be on the floor with you guys on Tuesday. But the thing is, observations are really, I think they're another opportunity, to capture stuff that we can throw into the equation for the next run.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds
All right,
good.
so you're going to fix it. You get it to me. I'll send out the blanks. Greg could print them out. Are you on that meeting with IDEX at 2:30?
Nope.
That's like what, a communication upper management thing or something?
I think so. I think there's like a couple of weekly meetings, but
Well, if you're,
I wasn't.
if you're around, you know what, I'm just gonna say, could Jim come if you want to, you know what I mean? And I'll just
All
flip
right.
you the invite, because I
All
think IDEX did the invite. And
Okay.
they leave people off sometimes, you know, that we want to keep involved.
All right.
It's just not by mistake, you know, but my mistake though, not intentionally, you know what I mean? Because they just don't know enough to, you know, the impact of the players.
Yeah.
So, hey, what do you think of class, Jim?
Good.
Yeah.
So far so good. I mean, obviously it's somewhat review, right?
Yeah.
Probably string mapping, we're living it. But yeah, so far so good. I like it.
Hopefully you'll like it next couple of weeks too. It gets a little bit more challenging, you know?
Yeah. All right.
All right, brother.
All right, bud.
Take care. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, sure. Take care. I'll send that out.
Bye.
All right.